YouTube says it has had enough of vaccine misinformation on its site.
And false stories from phony sites to run circles around major news outlets.
Many people don't know the difference between something real and something created to deceive them.
Open your eyes.
If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we live in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. I need to cover some of the things going on with the weather these days, including the life-threatening heat dome that is intensifying as a ring of fire. It's the latest terminology that we're hearing is ring of fire storms, where they tell us it's referring to a pattern where thunderstorms form in a ring-like fashion around a central area of high pressure, often during a heat wave. The high pressure system creates a heat dome, trapping warm air and limiting cloud formation in the center, while cooler, unstable air along the edges allows storms to develop. These storms can be severe, producing damaging winds, large hail, and heavy rain. And they're telling us all this because they have big plans for weather modification, as we all know, and the science continues to evolve, but really means the science changes. They've told us they own the science. And now that they're murdering people, committing mass genocide using weather modification, they're going to continue to make up new stories every single day about things like a ring of fire, when they're going to show you weather patterns like this, the ring of fire, which is comical, where all of the moisture is outside of this gigantic circle. And it's not modification, folks. It's just the new normal. But we know that this has everything to do with weather modification, with the 5G towers, which are really GWEN towers, the ground wave emergency network towers. We know this has to do with heating up the ionosphere. That's what the ring of fire is. They have been using HARP. They have been using NexRad. They have been using the 5G towers to send and emit frequencies into the sky. What that does is it heats up the ionosphere. That's why you're seeing bizarre humidity levels in a lot of states during the summer of 2025, more so than normal. And of course, we know everything going on with these flash floods is all via weather modification. So let them explain to you in the news about the heat dome, which is locked in across the heartland, which again means that you could expect a lot of flash floods in these areas in the coming days/weeks.
All right, and as we said, a lot of these storms, they're fueled by the heat. The heat, it's extreme heat. You're looking at live shots from East St. Louis, Illinois, where we've got heat and humidity storms rolling through, flash flooding a concern this morning, and the heat's going to be a big story for us this afternoon. Memphis, Tennessee also will deal with some storms at times, but the humidity is going to be just adding up. And guess what? There's really no change in the forecast. This is going to continue for at least a week, if not longer. Area of high pressure is just going to build. We don't have something to come on in and nudge this out of here. Nice storm coming in from the west. It's just not going to happen. In fact, what it is going to happen is it's going to expand, cover a good chunk of the eastern seaboard, the desert southwest. This big dome of high pressure just continues to bring the numbers up and pump up the humidity from the moisture coming in from the Gulf. And having said that, those heat index values could feel more like 105 to 115.
So that's your new science. The heat dome, which is really the government heating up the ionosphere using cloud seeding and geoengineering, which of course enables them to direct and hold storms over targeted areas. And you could even look at so many of these, people that post images of radar. You could see the GWEN towers emitting electromagnetic frequencies into the atmosphere. These big circle patches that pop up on the map. And then suddenly, within hours, like we saw in Texas, we get flash flooding like we've never even imagined, where they're getting 30 feet of rain in 20 minutes. None of it makes any sense, but they continue, and I've talked about this before. I truly believe that they sit in a room and they laugh and they come up with ideas and they say, what could we come up with? Because they'll believe whatever we say. And obviously, one of those things that they constantly do is come up with ideas in regards to all of these bizarre weather patterns that we constantly see on a day in and day out basis. And this is the latest one. I know a lot of you commented on this in the forum, but this is national news now. The corn sweat, which is adding to humidity in the summer. So they tell us we're all nuts for talking about how they heat the ionosphere and how weather modification is real despite all the patents. And this is the stuff they feed the people. And the people out there think that we're crazy and stuff like this is real. That corn sweat is what's now adding to these heat waves, to this exasperated amount of heat. Look at these titles of these articles. Corn sweat is contributing to Wisconsin's extreme heat this week. What is it? What is it? Well, of course, they're telling you what it is because they literally just wrote what this is within the last week or so. Somebody just probably had a sticky pad, was sitting on the toilet, they came up with this, and now they're airing it on the national news. Listen to this.
There's an agricultural phenomenon that's making this heat wave even worse. It's called corn sweat. But don't let the name deceive you.
It's actually coming from all plants. Our Sarah Maki is live tonight in the Loop. Sarah, you're pretty far from the cornfields.
Yeah, that's right. Because we often think, though, of the concrete jungle as being the reason that the temperatures are rising. And we do have an urban heat island. But this week, there is another factor at play. The U.S. leads the world in corn production. Illinois growing more than any other state besides Iowa. And this time of year, the corn is high, leading it to lend its name to the phenomenon known as corn sweat.
But really all plants do that. So, you could just as much say soybean sweat. I guess they haven't got on that marketing yet.
With a master's in agricultural education, Joshua Berg says transpiration is not like our sweat or perspiration for cooling. It's a vital part of getting water through the plant.
Transpiration is a process where water is released from the plant's leaves, and that actually helps the plant move water.
So, Sarah, this is one of the forecast models. This is our global model.
Our meteorologist, Kylie Miller, telling us the effects of that transpiration are showing up in this week's forecasts.
The dew points could be about 5 to 10 degrees actually higher, adding with that corn sweat compared to what just Mother Nature is giving us.
Other crops like alfalfa and sugarcane have higher evapotranspiration averages than corn. Soybean is in a range comparable to corn, but it is corn's prevalence and growing season that are affecting us now.
So during the growing season, 1 acre of corn can release 3,000 to 4,000 gallons of water a day. Here in Illinois, we have about 11 million acres.
Numbers driving up the forecasts for our summer's second heat wave. The effects of this corn sweat could continue into the weekend. We could see more rainfall with the higher humidity.
So it's pretty incredible. This is what they're airing, and people are repeating this. What is it? I love how they, with these rings of fire and all this new terminology they give us in regards to what's going on with the weather. They tell you this thing as if it's existed forever. And then they go, well, here's what it is. What is it? Well, we'll explain it to you. They just make it up. They make it up every single week. And they tell you it has something to do with climate change. And then people out there are literally talking about corn sweat. And let me read a little bit to you about what corn sweat is, despite what you just heard there, just so you can hear how ridiculous this is. As humidity sets in across the region, raising temperatures into the 90s and even 100s across the Midwest, corn may be partly to blame for the humidity. I mean, what's next? You want to blame the ocean? Oh, right, they already do, right? Do you want to blame the dirt in the ground? Are you going to blame raisins next? What ridiculous idea are you going to come up with next, right? Are you going to tell us that strawberries are causing the humidity? Might as well, because if it's not corn and you pick another fruit or vegetable, these sheeple will seem to actually think that this stuff is real. They think this is real news. So corn sweat describes the moisture released into the atmosphere by corn plants through a process known as evapotranspiration. The phenomenon significantly contributes to the high humidity levels experienced during hot summer months in the Midwest. So let's just recap. The corn is sweating, okay, because the corn is hot. Suddenly, corn, I'm sure people identify as corn, so I'm sure we'll just call corn a person. Corn is sweating. And because of corn sweat, we're getting higher amounts of humidity. Now, when we counter that and talk about the towers that we see around us, right? Well, we talk about these towers that are called 5G towers, which are really GWIN towers, which again means ground wave emergency network. That's what they are. When we talk about that, that makes us crazy, right? Everywhere we drive, we see these towers. These towers got put up, and not one of us noticed a difference with our cell phones. Not one person did. Even the sheeple out there didn't notice, because that's really the only thing they concern themselves with, right? Is their technology. And they were even complaining. They were like, why isn't my phone going faster? They didn't care about those towers and the dangers of the frequencies and the radiation exposure that was coming from them. They only cared about if they could download a song faster or watch their, cartoons quicker on their phones, right? So they complained about that because they didn't see it go any faster, even though it couldn't be any faster than it already is. But when we bring up those towers, which you can see everywhere, all across the United States, all spaced out perfectly, and we talk about how those things are heating the ionosphere, well, we're tinfoil hat wearers, right? But they'll believe that it's actually corn that's responsible. So on top of all of that, you can expect to see some real hazardous conditions in America. We know that's what the plan is. They're going underground. They're using climate change as their scapegoat to commit genocide, to flood people out, to move them into FEMA camps. But this story is important. The UN court says that treaties compel wealthy nations to curb global warming. So the United Nations has come out and said that states must cooperate to achieve concrete emission reduction targets, right? And while that story is out there about the United Nations, what do we hear in America? Trump's EPA now says greenhouse gases don't endanger people, right? Which is true, they don't. But you see where the narrative is there? The UN is saying that countries who do not follow the climate laws are going to be punished. But Trump's saying we're not going to follow those laws because climate change isn't real. So what that tells you is that we could expect more and more flash floods, 55,000 tornadoes popping up. I wouldn't be surprised if we see fire tornadoes. We've got the dome that's sitting over us. We have the ring of fire. That's what they're telling you with these stories. They're telling you that this is why the climate is so weird and the humidity is so high, because corn is sweating, because corn is apparently sweats now. And the UN is saying that countries that don't follow their global warming rules, their climate laws, are going to be punished, while Trump says, well, we're not only going to not follow it, we don't believe that they're real. So they're endangering people, right? And that's what Trump's job is here. So all the Democrats can yell, you voted for him, while they flood these places out and then blame it on the climate, and you don't hear a peep from the alt-right media about weather modification whatsoever. So we can expect more and more hazardous conditions in the United States of America, and we can expect them to blame it on things like, well, corn I wouldn't be surprised if they told us that corn took a dump and it affected the climate and these people believed it, right? What's going to be next? A nut, right? We can hear about cashews. Is cashews affecting the climate? Sure. And these people just nod. And every time we yell about weather modification, what do? They roll their eyes while our government commits mass genocide and distracts you with ridiculous stories like corn sweating to combat the actual feeling that people are getting that something isn't right, but they can't figure out just what it was, right? Well, if they were here, they've come to the right place, but unfortunately, most of them aren't here. They're listening to their controlled media, whether it's the alt-right media or the mainstream media, telling them that the corn is sweating. So stay safe out there. Watch out for more weather modification in the coming weeks. We could expect, I'm sure, more flash floods in targeted areas, which means watch for states, specifically the Midwest right now. That's where they're telling us this dome is. Watch those states to get hit over and over and over again, because that's the pattern we see. We just saw it in New Jersey, New York. They hit flash floods over and over again. We just saw it in Texas. We've seen it in other states. That's the MO for the bullseye. They hit it, and then they go, oh, and by the way, it's not over yet. There's more coming. And they hit it, and they hit it until they flood it out. These people are psychopaths to the extremist levels possible. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.